Since 1994, the district has been fortunate to have distinguished businesses and organizations sponsor the Academic Shares for Teaching Excellence program.
And I'm fortunate and honored to be able to introduce Samantha Keaton as the winner of the 2018 Humanities Award. We had a wonderful opportunity to spend some time with one of the very best teachers in Fort Worth. We got a first-hand look at teaching excellence. We saw commitment at a whole nother level, commitment to the artistry of teaching, commitment to respect, commitment to helping develop strong, independent leaders. And by the way, for a whole nother level of commitment, Samantha is giving birth to twins tomorrow, so can we get a quick round of applause?
As far back as I can remember, I've always wanted to be a teacher. Now, there was a moment in 5th grade that I wanted to be a marine biologist simply because I could spell it. But once I realized that a marine biologist did more than play with dolphins, and that they needed to take a lot of science classes, I jumped back on the train to being a teacher. I'm glad I did, because this is what I love to do. Are there bad days? Of course. But it's the good days that keep me coming back, and it's the amazing days that keep me driving to improve my craft. I am a proud nerd, actually a history nerd. In my classroom, being a nerd is not a bad thing. Being a nerd means that you are passionate about something. I would dare say that everyone in this room is a nerd in their own passionate way. At the beginning of every school year, I tell my students that my goal for the year is to make them into history nerds. They do look at me oddly, but if I do my job right throughout the year, I will bring them to my side. I love teaching students and being there when they realize that there are doors that they did not know existed. My favorite professional quote is to be the person you needed when you were younger. I do not know who said it, but it makes sense in the education world. We can all think back to our time in school and think of something that we missed out on or wish we could do again. As the teacher in the room, I hold the power to make an impact on my students' lives beyond the classroom content. This is why I teach. Thank you.
I'm honored to introduce the 2018-2019 winner of the Chase Fort Worth ISD Secondary English Teaching Chair, Mr. Leo Vaughns, also affectionately known by his current and former students as Papa. Mr. Vaughns has been teaching for 29 years in Fort Worth ISD, all with the same school, Kirkpatrick Middle School. Without further ado, please let me introduce you to Mr. Leo Vaughns.
As an educator, it is my passion to go fishing. Each day I put the bait of motivation, inspiration, encouragement, compassion, and enthusiasm on my line as I present exciting and sometimes unusual lessons in my classroom. This bait is my hook, and when I reel it in, strong, positive relationships are built. Strong, positive relationships are built so much until many of my former and current students do not only know me as Mr. Vaughns, but also call me Mr. Kirkpatrick, Papa, Pops, Daddy, and Uncle. Yes, we are a family, a Wildcat family. Relationships are built so much until after wearing our school mascot since 1998, it resulted in me being awarded with the new mascot during our homecoming week in September. Strong, positive relationships built so much until August 7, 2018, it was approved to have our school auditorium named in my honor. It is true. It is true that you cannot have a testimony until you go through a test. My testimony stems from building these strong, positive relationships because during my years at Kirkpatrick Middle School, in spite of their obstacles, many of my students are now teachers, nurses, dental assistants, ministers, musicians. One is a professional baseball player, and one is a doctor. So some may ask the question, why do I love teaching? My answer can best be explained through the lyrics of the late Whitney Houston when she says, I believe the children are our future. Teach them well and let them lead the way. Show them all the beauty they possess inside. Give them a sense of pride. to make it easier. Let the children's laughter remind us how we used to be. There is a proverb that states, give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Teach him how to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. So yes, my passion is fishing in my classroom, but the real passion is watching them grow, and regardless of how old they may be or where they are, they keep in contact and never seem to forget Papa, their fisherman.
We are very privileged to sponsor 3 chairs for elementary math and science, middle school STEM, and high school STEM. And we have 3 outstanding teachers that you'll hear from today. So we'll start with Ashley Duncan from Sam Rosen Elementary School. She was selected for the elementary math chair because she represents what she believes in, and that is that of a student that does believe that the teacher cares about them, and that's why they will learn.
Oh my gosh, okay. So why do I teach? Well, did you realize that teaching can actually be very cruel? I can't see. All right, especially for elementary school teachers, and not for the reasons you may be thinking. It is cruel because you have spent your life every day with these adorable human beings. You have labored relentlessly to help them be successful in school and prepare them for life. You witness them to do amazing things, make profound statements, and finally master a skill they have been struggling with for so long. You share your life with them and you get to know theirs as well. You love them and treat them like your own children. Then all of a sudden, the last day of school comes, and they are now someone else's students officially. It is heartbreaking. And however, I do this every year. And why? Because even when they move on, they are still my students, my kids. And I expect them to come back to visit me and let me know how life is going. And not all of them come back, but a lot of them do. And years later, they bring flowers or notes of appreciation just to show they remember me. And my proudest moments are attending their high school graduations or writing recommendation letters for an honor society or a club for which they want to apply. I teach because I believe God has placed me here to make an impact in their life, not just now, but for their future. And I even asked my kids, because I was struggling with these remarks, and I even asked them why they think I teach. And they gave several reasons, but the majority agreed on 2 simple ones, and I agree with it. Ms. Duncan, you teach because you like to, and you inspire us to learn new things every day. Okay, so thank you so much.
Now we have our second teacher, Bradley Lake from McLean Middle School. He was selected for the middle school STEM chair because he creates a safe environment for his students that is interactive and collaborative, that promotes problem solving and critical thinking. He is an advocate for continuous learning and very passionate about what he does.
I have never worked at a school that is so close. I would like to thank my family. My parents and my sisters never stopped believing in me, even when I stopped believing in myself. And that's where my story starts. See, on April 23rd, 2007, I was homeless living underneath a bridge. I had encountered many difficult situations in my life and believed that my life was meaningless. I was at the lowest point in my life, and I was even considering suicide. I began staying at a homeless shelter, and that's where I met people who guided me back to the road of hope. While living in the shelter, I made a decision to go back to school. I spent my first semester of college living in a shelter. You see, when I was 21 years old, I quit college because no one had ever taught me how to deal with failure. I went back to college at the age of 37. I planned to major in social work, but the first class I attended on my return changed my life and my path. I entered English 1301, where Shannon Smith was the professor. Wow, she was amazing. She had the ability to push me to my full potential and believe in myself. It dawned on me that one person can affect a person's life. Thanks to Shannon Smith, I changed my major and started majoring in math science education. You see, I believe we live in a world of yets. Some have not felt the pain of losing a loved one yet. Some have not been homeless yet. But I became an educator because I believe my students have not reached their full potential yet. People believed in me, and as an educator, that is why we love what we do. To all the students who feel different and alone, I get it. That was me. But being different is a good thing. And finally, I would like to thank my students and their parents. They are the reason why I love what I do. They push me to be a better person and challenge me to change my perception of today's world. I am proud to have won this award, but I feel like I already won every day I walk through the doors of McLean Middle School. Thank you.
Sergio Flores from Young Women's Leadership Academy. He was selected as high school STEM chair because it was very clear that he was focused on the growth of his students. He is very interactive and allows students to learn through real-world application. He believes that all his students have an engineering side, and that his job is to help them figure out what kind of engineer it is and how to get it to come out and shine.
Now, why do I teach? Actually, I never thought I was going to be a teacher. 10 years ago, I was laid off during the recession, 2008, and it hit. I was struggling to find a job. Finally, an assistant principal in El Paso gave me a shot. He said, "Hey, why don't you come teach engineering? You have job experience." So he gave me a chance with no teaching experience, no certification, no nothing. So here I go. He took me under his wing and taught me that we needed teachers out there. We don't need friends. Students do not need friends. They need mentors and leaders that show them the right path, or at least push them in the right direction to be leaders in this world. And I honestly did not know what I was getting myself into at that time. I figured, I'm just going to do this for a couple of years and then move on, go back in the industry. Nope, didn't happen. 10 years later, and I'm still teaching. This honestly has been the most rewarding job I've ever had in my life. I thought I was going to go into the classroom and teach them my knowledge and my skills that I had. I was all gung-ho. But I came out learning that actually, just as much as the students learn from us, we learn twice as much from them. And I can honestly say that I could not see myself doing any other job right now than teaching. Thank you very much again.
On behalf of the Blue Zones Project, it is my privilege to introduce this year's recipient of the Academic Chair for Teaching Excellence in Health and Physical Education. Please congratulate from Rosemont Middle School, Rosemont 6th grade, Mr. Jeffrey Peters.
As I was looking at my speech, I was thinking maybe Big Papa could sing it for me. I'm blessed that Rosemont 6 chose me to teach health and PE. I chose to become a teacher to be a positive role model for my students both inside and outside the classroom. I help my students to become the best citizens they can be. I aim and inspire students that they will have the inspiration to strive to do whatever they want with their lives. I'm sure most of you know how hard it is to teach some students. There are a select few that try our patience, push our buttons, and try to purposely get me frustrated last year. Last year I had a student that was all these things and more. I conferenced with her mother. I called her home several times. She received attention. I conferenced with her mother more and felt like I wasn't getting anywhere. It wasn't until the end of March until she made a dramatic turn. She started to listen, show respect, and show me her wonderful personality. I knew somewhere throughout all those problems was a wonderful young lady. On one of the last days of school, she wrote me a heartfelt letter telling me how sorry she was for her behavior last year. She wrote 3 important life lessons that she said I taught her: to respect her parents because they work hard for her, to respect herself and others, and to take care of her body because it's the only one she has. Even when you don't think students are listening to you, they pick up on the everyday things you teach. Thanks again for this award. God bless.
It is my honor to serve as sponsor for the Chair for Teaching Excellence in Special Education. The committee is proud to present this year's chair to Lori Serja. As a special education inclusion teacher, Lori works with children of various ability levels. However, she prefers not to call them challenges, but to look at them as starting points or beginnings. Not only was Lori's approach to teaching children exemplary, her true passion for children was quite evident during the candidacy process. In her own words, children can learn and be successful when they know they are loved, cared for, heard, accepted, and have at least one positive relationship with an adult.
This recognition today is about my kids, my students. They are my kids, my amazing, beautiful, brilliant, loving, courageous, and extremely talented kids. I would like to share a quick story with all of you. Recently, while in one of my inclusion classrooms, I overheard a few of my special education students encouraging their peers when they were faced with a challenging task. And just as their peers were about to give up, the words I heard next were so familiar to me. You aren't smart, you're brilliant. And that's what I tell them all the time when they say they are not smart. I'm not smart. No, you're brilliant. You need to believe in yourself. You need confidence, just like Mrs. Serja tells us. I continue to teach because the connections and relationships we have with our students, they make positive impacts on their learning and they last a lifetime. I want to conclude with a quote, one of my favorite quotes, by Rita Pearson. Every child deserves a champion, an adult who will never give up on them, who understands the power of connection and insists that they become the best they can possibly be. Thank you.
When we read her application, when we saw the initial product that she had sent in her application, it was clear that she had a deep understanding of elementary reading and the importance as a third grade teacher of getting those students on reading level so they could start the process of reading to learn the next year. She understood the complexity. She's the bilingual teacher in her school and understood the importance of working with Spanish-speaking students and English-speaking students. And it was clear that she was deserving for elementary reading. So I'd like to present Ms. Elizabeth Foreman.
Working in an urban school district is no easy feat. Every day you're battling poverty, and poverty comes in many different shapes and sizes, and it does make learning more challenging, but not impossible. You can get caught up in the statistics out there that predict the futures of students who grow up in poverty, and it can really break your heart if you let it. But when I look at my students, I don't see statistics. I see hope, potential, and brilliance, and I wouldn't be here today if it weren't for them. However, if you focus on that pile of obstacles, you'll miss all the magic. In Fort Worth ISD, our kids beat the odds every day. The only word I have for that is magic. When a child who has been labeled violent in pre-K drops that label by the end of kindergarten after some love and structure, that's magic. When a little girl who's being physically abused gets herself ready for school every day, arrives on time, and then passes the STAR, that's magic. When a little boy who shares one bedroom with his mother, father, and 2 siblings becomes the highest reader in your room and never misses an opportunity to say please and thank you, that's magic. When a student whose parents are in prison finishes his first chapter book in one weekend because he stayed up all night to read it, it was almost as cool as Fortnite, that is magic. And when my class of 3rd graders donates their ice cream and chip money to adopt an endangered animal, I mean, how magical is that? So when people say, these kids can't do what other kids can, or it's just too hard for these kids, they only say that because they don't know about the magic. Our kids can. They have, they will, and they do achieve great things every day. It's an honor to be here today, and the privilege of my lifetime to get to serve the magical students of Fort Worth ISD.
We are thrilled to support the 3rd annual Broadway at the Bass Chair for Teaching Excellence in Theater and/or Dance. As a nonprofit organization, we're also very happy that our award is underwritten by John and Cammie Goff. This year's recipient is Julia Worthington, who teaches theater at Western Hills High School. For 41 years now, she's in her 41st year, Julia has built, it's amazing. Julia has built the program from 1 class to 10 classes and 6 to 9 student productions a year. And I can tell you that is a lot of evenings and weekends, I assure you. We are proud to present Julia Worthington with this year's Broadway at the Bass Chair for Teaching Excellence in Theater.
Theater has always been my light. It has led me many places, but ultimately I managed to follow it all the way back to high school, and I've been there for 40 years. I had a lot of guidance along the way. For my first real play, there was Ms. McKenzie, who told me to stand up tall and to speak loudly. Ms. Van Tassel in middle school taught me how to work for the good of the group. At Paschal, I was that theater kid, you know, the one always in a show, at rehearsal, learning lines. And Mrs. Miriam Todd, red-haired wild woman that she was, had quite a flair for the dramatic. And she showed me that the little theater at Paschal High School was magic, just waiting to happen. At Trinity University, Dr. Paul Baker taught me respect for all aspects of theater. I fell in love with directing and technical theater there. Teaching in a teen workshop class at the grad school at Dallas Theater Center showed me that my real strength was going to be helping other people find their own aha moments. Here's an example. Last spring, one of my seniors, Yuli, she was in tears after our last thespian cast party. She told me she was afraid to leave Western Hills High School. She was raised in poverty. Her attendance, her grades, and her discipline issues were absolutely terrible. If there was an activity that required risk, Yuli probably already done it. As a sophomore, she was placed in Theater 1. No one else would have her. After I forced her to present her first scene, and of course it was late, but I was glad she was just up there. She stood on stage, and then this slow smile came across her face. And her eyes met mine, and I knew that she felt it. It was her aha moment. It had just happened. Yuli became my onstage star, my no-nonsense, all-around thespian leader. Graduation was looming, and she now had a B+ average. We talked, and the military was her way to education and a career. It was her way out. She enlisted. That night, as I hugged her, I whispered in her ear, "Baby girl, don't be afraid. Look at all you've done. Go and find some more magic, and then you come back and you tell me about it." Last week, literally last week, a young woman walked into the theater in her crisp uniform. She returned from Washington, D.C. She was studying computer logistics. Yuli's eyes met mine, and she wasn't afraid anymore. She was aglow with a new light. And she said, "Let's talk, Miss Worth." And seeing that brave light in her eyes is better than all the curtain calls that I ever got to take. I teach for those precious moments. They're magical, and I am always waiting for that next aha moment. Thank you very much for this award.
The Paulus Foundation started funding the teaching chair for excellence in the visual arts over 15 years ago. Western Hills Primary School in the Las Vegas Trail Corridor is home to lots of kids with very challenging lives. It would be easy for a teacher to suffer burnout in a place like that. But instead, a year ago, after nearly 14 years with Fort Worth ISD at Western Hills Primary, Rachel completely restructured her curriculum. She had become inspired by best practices in elementary education that she could adopt in the arts. We are so lucky that you chose to teach at Fort Worth ISD and Western Hills Primary.
Hi. When I was in elementary school, I remember making one particular piece of art. It was a print. It was a still life of a flower, but it was so much more than that. It was special. It was on sandpaper. When it was colored in thick and waxy with my crayons, my teacher helped me iron it onto a crisp piece of white paper. It was pixelated and textured. It was framed in bright yellow and green construction paper. It hung in the cafeteria at the PTA meeting, and I was so proud of it. My art teacher made me feel amazing with everything that I made. I felt really extra special because I knew Mrs. Camp in my everyday life. She was friends with my mom. She taught me how to marble paper in my Sunday school. I even got to go to her house from time to time, and she would show me the paintings that she was working on. And I wanted to be just like her when I grew up. So at the ripe old age of 7, I decided I was going to be an art teacher, just like Mrs. Camp. When I started teaching in 2001, I did not get to be an art teacher. I was a first grade teacher in a portable in the back of Western Hills Primary School. The next year, still in that portable, I began teaching art after school for fun, just with a few kids. The next year, I added a second day of art club, and I handpicked the kids in that group. We had a local artist that came and taught them a whole bunch of new techniques. In 2006, we got a new superintendent, and we were told we would be getting an art teacher for the first time at our school. I got the job without even interviewing. Now I'm in my 11th year in this room at this school, and my teaching career is still changing. Last year, like Flora said, I found a new way to teach art called Teaching for Artistic Behaviors. It's a very unique style of teaching that involves a lot of student-driven learning, a lot of exploring, and a lot of experimenting. My room doesn't look like a classroom anymore. It looks like an art studio. Kids come in and choose their own styles, their own mediums, their own techniques for their works, and they're only 5 and 6 years old. They present their pieces, they reflect on what they've done, they critique each other. Many times they talk about what went great, but lots of times it's what did not go so great. And they love it. They're finding their voices. They're finding that they have importance and that mistakes are a big part of the journey. In fact, when someone makes a mistake in my class and we find a solution to it together, everyone cheers together. Boom! Learning! The learning is real and deep in my room, more than I've ever seen it. Last year, I had a little kindergartner named Erica, and she sat in my bus line at dismissal every day. One day, she was petting someone's backpack, and the girl in front of her just looked at her confused. Erica said, "I really love this texture." And the girl said, "What are you talking about?" And Erica said, "Girl, you don't know about texture?" She told her all about it. They're making connections outside of my room. They're realizing art is all around them, and that's what I want for them. Last year, for the first time, we had seniors from Western Hills High School come and walk through the hallways right before graduation in their regalia. One of my all-time favorite students was in that group of seniors, and I hadn't seen him since he was 7 years old. He knew me when I saw him, and I knew him right away. We cried and we hugged as he passed by. He looked me up later on and emailed me. He told me I'm still his favorite teacher. He still has artwork framed in his room as a 19-year-old that he made when he was 7 in my class. He and several other of his classmates are on paths to careers in art now because of seeds that I planted when they were just learning their ABCs. My goal is not to make artists. My goal is to make creative people, people who believe in their own ideas and have confidence to put their ideas out into the world. And that's why I teach. Thank you to the Angela D. Palos Arts Education and to Flora for this amazing award.
Jody Sarber is receiving the the Teaching Excellence Chair in Secondary Science. One of the things that I enjoyed or I liked listening to her in regards to the reasons of why she teaches and why she's involved doing what she does is one of the quotes that she provided in her application. She quoted Dr. Seuss from the book The Lorax, and it helps describe her teaching philosophy and learning. And I quote, "Unless someone who cares a whole awful lot, nothing will get better. No, it will not." So I think that describes her as she continued through the application process, showing and describing the way she cares about her students and about her fellow co-teachers. So it is indeed an honor and a privilege on behalf of the committee that I partnered with today and of Atmos Energy to introduce to you Ms. Jody Sarber.
I'm also humbled by this honor because I am the first in my family to obtain a college degree at the age of 31 from TCU. I'm also the first in my family to obtain a master's degree from UTA. I'm an alternatively certified teacher with my path becoming an educator as a second career. So why do I teach? First, I love science, and I hope to inspire some future scientists and engineers. I want to engage students into the field of science with analytical and critical thinking skills in order to become better global citizens. I teach science because I'm curious. I really enjoy exploring and get excited when demonstrations works or sparks questions. I want my students to have those aha moments because that feeds my soul. I enjoy the challenge of showing students how failure can teach you how to solve a problem. I bring this excitement into the classroom to inspire future scientists or engineers so that they can take their diversity of experiences into the science field. In addition to loving science, I also believe in the American dream, which inspired my own parents to overcome any obstacles in their lives. This belief that through education, hard work, and persistence has also led me to overcome many challenges within my own life. The community of Fort Worth and Fort Worth ISD provides a great network of support through strong partnerships that give teachers and students the support they need to grow and be successful. In addition to a great community support, my students have made me a better person and a better teacher. A majority of the students that I have taught have many obstacles in front of them. They have many challenges or trauma that they are overcoming now or have had to overcome. Despite those obstacles, they show up every day with a smile on their face and are ready to learn. I do the best that I can do to create lessons that are challenging, engaging, and also meet their needs. Over the years, my students have made me a better science educator and so much a better person. And I'm honored to share this award with them. Thank you. And I made it without crying.
We first had the privilege of meeting Mr. Chris Workman last year when he placed as a finalist. And I must say, I'm glad he came back and he did not give up. Chris is a 14-year veteran with Fort Worth ISD and currently is teaching and coaching varsity football at Arlington Heights High School. This year, he rose to the top to capture our attention to become this year's award recipient. His tireless dedication to his students and long list of academic achievements have earned him the award that we proudly present to him, the Chair for Teaching Excellence in Secondary Math.
I teach because God has given me a passion and a zeal to mentor and instruct these teenagers. Many of you have experienced something similar to this as I have. The feeling of not being able to sleep very well the night before the first day of school because you're excited to meet the first day to meet those students. The feeling of jubilation when a student gets passing test results for the very first time. Or maybe years later when they're all grown up and they come back to see you and they tell stories of things that have happened in your classroom. The ordinary days of working hard makes this all possible, which makes it very vital and significant every day. And that is what I love about being a teacher. Every day matters. Well, as it is a tradition in my class, I like to finish up with a joke. My students say these jokes are not so good, or maybe old dad jokes, or something like that. Well, I actually take that as a compliment, so, well, you decide for yourself. I really do hope you've enjoyed my speech today, but if not, hopefully you had a good nap. Thanks.
Pleased to present Crescent's Teaching Chair of Excellence, Colby Allen. Every year I'm impressed with how the teachers mentor, engage, and inspire their students. It was very exciting to watch him in action as we saw him move around his classroom with his young ladies at the Young Women's Academy. They were all asking questions, engaged, wanting to learn. So please join me in honoring Colby Allen.
To be completely honest, though, I'm a little uncomfortable. I'm not used to being in front of a crowd like this. I usually have a lot of just random girls staring back at me. And I'm not really a public speaker. I'm a graphic design teacher. I'd be much more comfortable. Our school's right there. designing the program or working behind a computer. So what I'm about to say, and I might go a little off script and I might ramble a bit, I have a tendency to do that, but what I'm going to say is it comes from my heart, and which if you've ever worked or lived with me, it can sometimes be difficult to find out when I'm actually being sincere. I want you to know I'm being sincere. My wife's probably out there nodding her head right now. But I'm not really sure why it is that I became a teacher. Before I was in the classroom, and to all non-teachers here, let me just say, nothing can actually prepare you for being in a classroom on day one. It is the most intimidating moment of my entire life. But I thought that teachers' lives were filled with those like movie moments where everything is solved and we're having just those life-changing moments. But actually, after becoming a teacher, I realized that I'll never need a classroom full of students standing on their desks cheering for me to validate what I do. Much more are the small, kind of unexpected and weird moments that happen day to day. A thoughtful question a student asked that you never considered, the solution to a problem that you didn't even know you had, the claps of support when a student is accepted to college. That's just an amazing feeling. You can't have a bad day after that. Or the random time a student brought a Golden Girls puzzle to class and asked if they could put it together, which we let her. It was a nice puzzle. So even though I can't answer why I became a teacher in the first place, I can answer why I still am one. To have the opportunity to help my students strive to be better people each day is truly an honor. They are the reason teaching has become my career. They are why I strive each day to make their experiences as unique and valuable as possible. Whatever way I've inspired them, it has been returned to me in ways that they will never imagine. And while this award is incredibly humbling, my students are what make teaching such a rewarding experience. Thank you.
And as a teacher of early childhood development, it's critical to understand that kids learn differently. And when you find that way that they learn and you teach them, when they're older, they will be successful. And that's what Randy does in her classroom. You see, she's done something in that classroom that makes it inviting. She has mastered invitational education where the kids come, they want to learn. They look around, they can be comfortable. And so it is with great pleasure and an honor that I introduce to you this year's recipient of the Early Childhood Development Chair, Randy Higgins.
Being an early childhood teacher is a very rewarding job. One reward of this job is the joy I feel when parents tell me their child loves school. I feel that instilling a love for learning and school is one of the most important roles of an early childhood teacher. We set the stage for children to become lifelong learners. If you make learning fun, they will come back for more. Another reward of being an early childhood teacher is the tremendous growth I get to see in students. I teach kindergarten and first grade, so over the course of 2 years, I see students grow into readers, writers, mathematicians, and scientists. I feel a great sense of accomplishment that I have helped them to develop the skills needed for success. The best gift I receive is the inspiration to play. I believe children learn through play. It is their work. It is through play that they develop creativity, learn to be flexible thinkers, improve decision-making skills, develop core social skills, and feel comfortable enough to take risks. Let's also not forget play is often pleasurable. As I watch my students play on the playground and in the classroom, it inspires me to do the same. This is by far the best gift of all. My students remind me to take the time for play, time for me to enjoy things I love, teaching, going on a morning bike ride with my family, fishing on a beautiful sunny day, singing karaoke with friends, or just curling up on the couch with a hot cup of coffee and a great book, are all forms of play that my students inspire me to include in my life. To quote Dr. Stuart Brown, "Life without play is a grinding mechanical existence organized around doing things necessary for survival. Play is the stick that stirs the drink. It is the basis of all art, games, books, movies, fashion, fun, and wonder. In short, the basis of what we think of as civilization. Play is the vital essence of life. It is what makes life lively. Thank you so much again for this honor. I hope you all will be inspired to include more play in your lives as well. Thank you.
This year's winner graduates from the University of Texas in Arlington with a BA in Spanish, has been teaching for 14 years and the last 8 in Fort Worth ISD. And she was a Campus Teacher of the Year teacher for Young Women's Leadership Academy in 2017. It was an amazing group of teachers, and the competition was close, but at the end it became very clear who deserved this award. You could see the impact she had on her students. When we made the visit to the classroom, you could see her students were very excited and proud to have their teacher being honored. It is my pleasure to introduce this year's Teacher Chair for Acquisition of Language from the Young Women's Leadership Academy again, Maria Ortiz Garcia.
I started teaching Spanish at Eastern Hills High School as a 22-year-old. I started in December, and they had 4 teachers leave them before December. So when I came in, they were expecting me to leave right away. But I was there in May, and they were surprised. And I was there the following year, and they were surprised. I stayed at Eastern Hills for 4 years, and I really enjoyed it. I think they taught me more than UTA did. I knew that I had to reach all my students, otherwise I would have chaos. And just like he said, Mr. Jordan said, they wanted to see that I cared for them. And when they realized that I did, they started learning from me. And as they were learning from me, I was learning from them too. When I started at YWLA, my girls are the same. They want to know that I care and that I want the best for them. And I think that's what everyone in that building wants. YWLA, Young Women's is a very challenging campus. Sometimes we have events all week long, sometimes on the weekend. Sometimes we have overnight trips, but that's what makes us great, and I love it. So, thank you, and I'm honored to be here among all these great stories and these great teachers. I think I would not have expected to be here with you, so thank you.
I'm very pleased with this year's recipient, Brandy Waller Pace. So Brandy hails from Atlanta, but I guess like me and many others, she got to Texas as fast as she could. She attended Howard University. Brandy can play the piano, the guitar, banjo, and she sings. Brandy has been with the Fort Worth ISD for 7 years, and she teaches music. And so the one thing, we've talked an awful lot about STEM, so because of what I support, I'm a fan of STEAM, the A for arts, and I'm glad to have her here. So please give a warm congratulatory welcome to Brandy. Fabulous recipient. Thank you.
When I was hired by Fort Worth ISD, I didn't yet consider myself a full-fledged music educator. I'd spent my first year and a half in a nebulous 5th and 6th grade music position, straddling the line between elementary general music and middle school elective music, not quite sure of the best way to guide my students. I'd reached the point at which I realized just how much I didn't know. Thankfully, I had a plan. I was to spend an intensive period during the summer working on elementary pedagogy, filling in the gaps I needed to do my best at my new job. The training I received that summer on conducting, pedagogy, music literacy, and vocal technique provided me with the framework I sought to confidently move forward, teaching and building relationships with my students. I was able to make it through my first couple of years, but my satisfaction didn't last long. I soon started to realize just how much I still did not know. But this time, the range of what I needed had grown wider. How could I best teach my children? How could I make lasting connections? How could I create a program in which my majority minority students saw themselves reflected, while at the same time understanding the value of learning about others? Those questions have continued to guide me throughout my growth as an educator. I'm fortunate to teach in a district that heavily invests in its music educators in terms of training, materials, and support. Fort Worth ISD has also made a dedicated push toward addressing racial inequity in our schools. Inequity in our education system results in lower achievement for our minority students and affects whether or not they view themselves as part of the narrative that we weave for them about the community in which they grow and learn. At the heart of my teaching is knowing my students, validating who they are, and breaking down the systems, large and small, that tell so many of our children that they are not part of the narrative. I'm able to use the connective quality of music to show my students that they are seen and heard, and to show them how important it is to see and hear others, on a small scale in my classroom with their peers, and on a larger scale in the wider world. This award is a great honor, one that will allow me to once again seek what I do not yet know, with the goal of developing human beings who know that every tradition is valid and worth sharing and understanding, and that they have a place in this world. Thank you.
It is both my privilege and my great pleasure to be here as we honored 16 exceptional Fort Worth ISD educators. All of these teachers model exemplary leadership in the classrooms and on their campuses. They are teacher leaders. You are our most highly qualified teachers. You're our greatest asset. You not only are shaping the lives of your students, you are a mentor and a model to your colleagues. The ability that these teacher leaders have to connect with their colleagues and promote adult learning is also an essential piece of our growth and success. We value each of you, and we're proud that you are leaders in Fort Worth ISD. The Academic Chairs for Teaching Excellence program would not be possible without the 14 community partners who generously underwrite these awards, and many of them, as you've heard, year after year after year. What we're striving for in Fort Worth ISD is transformation so that all students, ALL, all students are prepared for success in college, career, and community leadership. We could not do that without your assistance. Thank you all for coming, and have a wonderful afternoon.